It all began with an unexpected event when Chelsea suddenly disappeared mysteriously. The truth gradually came to light, and it came as no surprise that the person Chelsea had once trusted, Allison, was the one behind the kidnapping. The early signs, the odd gestures, and Allison's growing obsession with Chelsea led BTG fans to suspect something sinister. The complex and full of subtext relationship between these two women slowly developed into a nightmare. Behind the attack and kidnapping lies a big question. Is Allison's obsession with Chelsea truly rooted in deep pain from the past? Or is it simply about control and possession that she wants to impose on her ex-lover? Allison, a woman who always sought control and power, not only wanted to keep Chelsea by her side but also felt that Chelsea's departure was a betrayal. She couldn't accept that Chelsea might leave her, so she decided to impose herself on her. However, their relationship was not just a romance. It contained wounds, pains that Allison had never dared face, memories of past hurts, of people who had abandoned her, of broken relationships, made Allison a vulnerable woman, easily led by negative emotions. But instead of dealing with those feelings in a healthy way, she turned to vent her anger on Chelsea, making everything spiral further out of control. When Chelsea tried to resist and escape from Allison's control, it drove Allison completely mad. Not only did she feel abandoned, but she also felt that all her efforts to keep Chelsea were in vain. The feeling of helplessness and failure turned Allison violent, and she was no longer the ex-lover, but a perpetrator. Chelsea's resistance, even if it was just a simple act of self-defense, ignited uncontrollable rage in Allison. And in that moment, everything changed forever. When the emergency call came through to Martin, the news about Chelsea's condition made everything worse. Chelsea was severely injured, almost losing her life due to Allison's attack. Despite the panic and fear, Martin couldn't help but feel a deep guilt when he realized he could have arrived in time to save Chelsea if he had acted sooner. The moments of confusion, the thoughts about what he could have done, not only made Martin feel helpless but also forced him to face a big question about his responsibility. He couldn't help but wonder if there was something else he could have done to save Chelsea, and if there was anything in the past he could have done to change the outcome. How would this guilt and helplessness affect Martin's actions in the future? And would he be able to overcome this feeling to continue fighting for justice? When Martin called for help, the worry didn't just stay with him. Chelsea's closest family members, especially Dani and Bill, also had to face the painful truth about her condition. Dani, unable to bear the shock, collapsed from the overwhelming pain. She felt as though a part of her was lost, and in that moment, all hope seemed to vanish. Bill, although saddened and in pain, was torn between the incomplete memories with Chelsea. The memories of the times they were together, the conversations left unsaid, and the promises unfulfilled, all made Bill feel as though he was losing his last chance to truly understand and love Chelsea again. However, unlike Bill and Dani, Jacob didn't let the pain cloud his judgment. He immediately acted, determined to hunt down Allison and bring her to justice. He was not only the only one in the family who stayed calm during the crisis, but also the one who saw the situation clearly. Jacob knew that no matter how strong the family bonds were, justice still had to be served, and he couldn't let Allison escape. Even though she had fled and left behind some vague evidence, Jacob remained determined, and he never gave up the search. After a long pursuit, the family finally found Allison at a secluded farm. This confrontation was not just a face-off with the enemy, but also a confrontation with the truth about Allison's nature. She, who had once been a threat, was now just a broken woman filled with regret. Her apologies couldn't erase what she had done, and no matter how many times she said she was sorry, her actions had left scars too deep. The Dupree family, despite their pain and loss, was still divided on what to do next. Dani and Bill, in their anger and disappointment, wanted to act forcefully, to seek revenge for what had happened. But Jacob, with his unwavering belief in justice, emphasized that only justice could heal these wounds. He didn't want his personal emotions to influence his decision, and he believed that vengeance would only make things worse in the end. No matter what the family decided, Allison could not change what she had done. She could only live with the regret and the loss of what she had lost. But for the Dupree family, the remaining question was whether they could find reconciliation and move on with their lives after these wounds, or whether the pain and betrayal would continue to haunt them forever. Though Allison was arrested, her obsession with Chelsea didn't fade. The days in jail, despite losing power and freedom, her thoughts about Chelsea continued to haunt her. The image of Chelsea, lying unconscious and facing death, still lingered in Allison's mind, unable to be shaken off. In the hospital, when Chelsea unexpectedly regained consciousness, all the hope the Dupree family thought they had lost was reignited. A small miracle, but enough to bring new faith. Martin and Dani rushed to Chelsea's bedside, two people filled with worry and guilt, especially Martin. He kept apologizing to Chelsea for coming too late, for not being able to stop everything before it was too late. However, despite the overwhelming guilt, life still lingered in Chelsea's body. She was still there, and that was the fragile hope they could cling to in order to continue to end these moments. Though the atmosphere was full of tension and the pain had yet to be soothed, they understood that they had a chance to heal. However, a big question still loomed. Dani and Bill, when faced with the pain of losing Chelsea, could they mend their relationship? Would the sorrow and regrets pull them into more complicated situations, entanglements they couldn't overcome? Dani, while Chelsea still lay in the hospital room, didn't leave her side. She was determined to protect Chelsea, no matter what happened. For Dani, Chelsea was everything, and she would do anything to keep her by her side. She was not just an ex-lover, but family, an irreplaceable part of Dani's life. Their relationship had been severely tested, but Dani couldn't give up, couldn't leave Chelsea to fight this battle alone. Meanwhile, Bill, though no less heartbroken, carried a different sorrow within him. He couldn't look at himself in the mirror without feeling regret. The unfulfilled moments with Chelsea, the promises left unkept, all of those things haunted him every night. Bill wanted to heal the wounds of the past, wanted to return what he had lost. But could he do that when everything had become too complicated? Would this loss be his chance to fix all his mistakes, or simply a regret too late, something that could never be turned back? The situation seemed to be stabilizing, but even so, the mental scars from this event would stay with them for life. The price they paid was too high. The unseen wounds would always haunt them, making every action, every decision heavier. And while the family tried to heal, Jacob continued his pursuit of justice. He was the only one in the family who stood firm in his principles, emphasizing that justice must be served, regardless of personal emotions. However, Jacob could not escape the inner conflict within himself. He kept telling himself that his goal was justice, but could the emotions of loss, vengeance push him off course? Jacob, who always stood firm on the side of justice, now began to feel the wounds inside. He knew that hunting Allison down was necessary, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling of conflict. Could he separate justice from personal feelings? Would his actions truly serve justice? Or was it just a way to vent anger and seek revenge for what had happened? The feeling of helplessness and pain inside him could cloud his judgment, making him lose his way in the path he had chosen. As for Allison, when she was arrested and faced with the truth of the crimes she had committed, she couldn't help but feel regret. However, the big question was whether her regret was genuine or just a strategy to lessen the consequences for herself. Did she truly understand what she had done, or was she simply trying to cover up her guilt with empty apologies? Allison couldn't change the past, but was she trying to lessen her crimes, or did she truly feel remorse and wish to make up for the mistakes she had made? In the moment she faced failure, when there was no longer any control, when everything was out of her hands, would Allison find a way to atone, or would she just continue to live in self-deception, unable to face what she had done? This question not only opens the door to exploring Allison's nature, but also poses a big challenge for the remaining characters. Will they be able to forgive, or will they simply let go to move forward? In the quiet moments at the hospital, where everything seemed to calm after the devastating storm, Dani stood silently, looking at her daughter, whom she had once feared would never wake up. The scene, with the machines around, the steady heartbeat of Chelsea, was now a symbol of life and hope. Dani felt the pain rising in her heart, but alongside it was something stronger than any emotion, a silent promise she made to herself. She would not let the darkness, whether from Allison or anything else, take her family again. They would survive, but not as helpless victims, but as those who had overcome the fierce storm, those who fought and won. That promise was not just a vow, but the driving force that kept Dani standing tall. With unwavering faith, Dani was determined to protect Chelsea at any cost. Nothing could stop her, not even the hidden dangers waiting ahead. She was not afraid, not hesitant, because in Dani's eyes, Chelsea was not just a daughter, but the remaining soul of her, the only reason she continued to fight. But the big question remained. Was Dani willing to sacrifice herself to protect her daughter? Could she accept the sacrifices that motherhood demanded, even if it meant facing unforeseen dangers? Every decision she made now carried a heavy responsibility, not just for Chelsea, but for the entire family. She knew that every step she took could be a crucial decision, a battle in her own mind and heart. Motherly love, with its boundless power, could lead Dani to make difficult decisions, choices that could change her life forever. She was not just a worried mother, but a warrior in the fight to protect her family. However, with that protection came questions filled with doubt. Could she cross the boundaries of motherhood without losing herself? Were the sacrifices worth it when facing danger, when her and Chelsea's lives were at such a tense breaking point? Every step she took, every decision she made, could lead to dangerous situations, and could she control everything? A mother's sacrifice could lead them to risky decisions, and in those moments, could Dani control the situation? Faced with Dani's worry, Martin couldn't escape the heavy guilt either. He arrived too late, and in his heart, the regret of what happened couldn't be erased. He blamed himself for not saving Chelsea in time, for not being able to do anything when she needed him most. This guilt haunted Martin every moment, and it couldn't be separated from the decisions he had to make. However, this guilt didn't always bring clarity. On the contrary, it could cloud Martin's vision, causing him to make mistakes in the future. Would this feeling cause him to continue trying to atone for his mistakes, or would it make him act recklessly, losing the clarity needed when facing the new dangers ahead? Martin might act under the influence of his emotions, but would it help him solve the problem, or only make things more complicated? Guilt, if not properly addressed, could lead to impulsive and thoughtless actions. Martin might dive into the search for Allison with great determination, but would he have the wisdom to act carefully? Every decision he made now carried the weight of the past, and the guilt could be the very thing that caused him to make unnecessary mistakes. Would Martin find a way to atone without being ruled by his emotions, or would he make things worse for himself? Martin's clarity in the moments ahead would determine not only the life or death of those around him, but also his ability to save everything within the Dupree family. The story is not only about the sacrifice of a mother or the guilt of a man. It is also an internal battle, where each character must face their emotions, decisions, and responsibilities. Dani and Martin, though each has their own reasons and goals, must face challenges they never imagined would happen in their lives. While Dani continues to fight for her daughter, Martin faces guilt and responsibility. Can they find a way to protect the family without paying too high a price? Or will they falter in difficult decisions, being pulled into a vicious cycle with no way out? Their story is not just a physical fight, but a mental one, where a mother's love and guilt will determine the path they take. With each passing moment, the tension in the hospital rises even further. Dani cannot shake off the thoughts about Chelsea's future. She stands by her daughter's bedside, holding her frail hand tightly, every silent promise she made breaking open in her heart. The promise was not just for Chelsea, but also for herself. The dark shadows of the past, the pain that left deep scars, would not bring her family down. She promised to protect Chelsea at all costs, even if it meant facing any danger. The bond of motherhood had become an unshakable force, like a supernatural power that helped her stay strong in this battle. However, Dani's resolve to protect Chelsea also forced her to confront difficult decisions. She understood that, to keep Chelsea safe, she might have to sacrifice herself. Dangerous situations could be waiting ahead, and Dani would have to make choices with no easy options. Would she be willing to sacrifice herself, regardless of the risks, to ensure Chelsea's survival and safety? These questions were not just a test of physical strength, but of mental resilience. Dani would face the delicate line between unconditional love for her daughter and the unavoidable consequences if she crossed too far in her protective instincts. Dani's thoughts seemed endless, but meanwhile, Martin continued to struggle with guilt, with questions that never stopped haunting him. How could he have saved Chelsea when she needed him most? How could he face the truth that he arrived too late, unable to prevent this tragedy from happening? Guilt followed him like a shadow, every second, every minute. Though Chelsea was alive, though the Dupree family could still hold on to hope, Martin's guilt grew deeper. He wondered if he could ever make up for this mistake. But when such pain touches the soul, can an apology or a small act heal that wound? Martin's guilt was not just a burden. It could also lead him to make hasty decisions without careful thought. He might act impulsively, and that could have unforeseen consequences. Would he continue to try to redeem himself by any means, or would worry and guilt cause him to lose the clarity necessary to make the right decisions in pivotal moments? This question made every action of Martin's more crucial than ever. He couldn't allow himself to be governed by emotions, but could he control the deep feelings weighing on him? Dani and Martin, each with their own pain, had to face important decisions. Would their emotions and inner struggles help them overcome these difficulties? Or would their wrong choices lead them to the edge of failure? Their story was not just one about protection, guilt, and love, but an internal battle within themselves. The pain and emotions shaped them, but would they become the driving force that helped them overcome the challenges? Or would they drag them down and make them lose themselves with unwavering determination? Dani knew that sacrifice was a part of motherhood, but she was also aware that every action she took would come at a price. Her choices would not only affect Chelsea but the entire family, and these choices could impact everything. The sacrifices Dani was willing to make could lead her to face dangers she could never predict. However, in that moment, Dani wasn't thinking about herself. She was thinking about a family she would protect, even if it meant giving up everything. Meanwhile, Martin had to face a struggle within himself that was no less difficult. The guilt was not just an obsession but a challenge to his clarity and decision-making ability. Could he continue to be the leader, the one who could see things objectively, or would he be led by his emotions, resulting in wrong choices? That guilt had pushed him to an important crossroads in his life, where he had to decide whether he could find a reasonable solution or if he would fall into blind revenge that he couldn't control. These questions were not just challenges for Dani and Martin, but were important questions for everyone around them. Could they overcome the inner turmoil, or would they continue to live in the storms of emotion, unable to break free? Every decision they made now was not just about one person's survival, but about the future of the entire Dupree family, about justice, and about the ability to find harmony after the destruction.